Hey there, Calzin here. I want to discuss choices in games. Sometimes in games you'll get like a karma choice where you can choose to do something good or choose to do something evil. I think most games, they have a linear storyline with a limited set of options, and no matter what you pick in the dialogue options, the response is going to be the same, or the railroading is going to continue to the destination station. You're going to reach the end of the story no matter what you do, essentially, when you play linear games. I love those games, nothing against them, but there's something deeper when choices are presented. I love games with choices that are effective and impact the world in some way. Like in Okami, your goal is to restore the forest back to the way that it was. So it's all like, dilapidated and dead, and then you destroy the demons from the area, and you go to the tree, and it blooms, and all of these flowers raise from the ground at supernatural speeds. It's so beautiful, and it's all sumie style as well, like a watercolor-ish style. It's such a beautiful game. But even in that game where it's linear, your choices impact the world in a discernible way. It changes the way that the world looks, and it makes the world feel more alive. I remember growing up and getting a very particular book series at the library called Choose Your Own Adventure. I have very fond memories of reading those books on my own, and then I have a particularly fond memory of reading with a group of friends of mine, where we would sit in a circle in the reading area of a bookstore, and we read up to a point where you had to make a decision and then pass the book around once that decision was made, so the next person would get to make the next decision. And if you're unfamiliar with Choose Your Own Adventure, the way that it works, the basic premise, is that the reader is presented every couple of pages with a choice. The goal is to arrive at one of several true endings where the story is resolved. The hero makes it to the end, the main character makes it to the end of the story. And it could either be getting out of a haunted house or solving a mystery, but every time the main character comes to a choice, the reader makes a decision from a multiple choice list of choices. For example, it'll say, okay, you enter into the house and there are 3 entrances. In one entrance, you hear growling. In the second entrance, you see a light coming out, streaming into the hallway. And the third entrance is dark and silent. Which door do you choose? And when you pick one, it says, go to page 41 or go to page 190. And you go to that page, and it continues the story from that point. But it could be a room with a wolf in it, and it kills the main character. And it says, okay, start over, go back to the beginning of the book, or go back to page 26 or wherever you were at. So it's an interweaving tale, and it's incredibly effective because it makes you want to go back and inspect all the alternate endings, the alternate choices. And while the unspoken goal of the book is to make it to the end of the story to get the good ending, it's also really interesting to explore all the bad endings. This concept of choose your own adventure transfers agency from the author or the writer to the reader. And in the case of games, it transfers agency from the writers to the player experiencing the game world. One of my first remembrances of this was Infamous on the PS3. It was very obvious, right? They present to you a choice, and I think the first one was like there was food on a tower and you had to knock it down, and then you had the choice of like, oh, we'll keep the food all to ourselves, or we'll let the crowd, have as much as they need. And that was the first evil choice of that game. It sets you on a path to deciding whether you want it to be infamous, like the title, or a hero, right? And it wouldn't just affect the bar, though. Like, it's not like you would just look evil or seem evil. You actually had a different ability tree based on what choices you made. So the choices were very obvious. It's not like it was hidden. It was very cut and dry. But your electricity, because you had electricity powers, would either turn red if you were evil, or they would turn blue if you were more like on the hero side. And you had a totally different ability tree. I just remember the infamous abilities were more powerful. They were more explosive, and it was frankly more fun to play. But I did feel bad about it, and I tend to pick the good guy in the game. Like, if I'm playing a game for the first time, I will always do the quote-unquote good path first, because I feel like I have a moral obligation to do that. They're virtual characters, they don't exist, so why do I feel bad when I hurt them? If I commit evil actions. Like in the infamous example, if I fried people in the crowd instead of allowing them to take the food, right? I feel bad about that. There's a certain effectiveness to the choices that you make in games. So Infamous, it was kind of a limited scope example in terms of a choice's effect on the world, but it was still interesting. You know, it provided an element of variance that most games, they don't even provide. You have a linear story and it leads you to a singular conclusion. But in Infamous, there were at least 2 endings. I don't know if there were more, but there were 2 endings. BioShock is a similar example. When you encounter the, what were they called? The little sisters or whatever? You could either choose to save them or harvest them. And it was a similar binary choice. If you chose to harvest them, you would get more ability power. If you chose to save them, then you would have less ability power, but they would like you. And then at the end of the game, there were different endings. So obvious spoilers for BioShock incoming. I think they would help you out in the final boss battle, and then they would be like, oh, you saved us. But if you harvested them, you know, they'd be like, oh, he's a bad man or something like that. And it mattered. It affected my remembrance of the story. And of course, especially in BioShock, I was like, harvest? I'm not doing that. Like, that is so wicked. It was just such a dark presentation, you know. It's like a horror game already, not really that scary, but kind of like a thriller game. Like, why would somebody just choose that on instinct? You know, that's not me. That's not who I want to be. And I know that I'm role playing a character in a game, but I still find it very difficult to make that leap to perform an evil, quote unquote, evil decision. I'm not gonna lie, I am a save scummer. I want to experience it all. So if I detect a choice is coming up, you know, sometimes you can scope it out. Like even in exploration, oh, I know this is the path I'm supposed to take, but I'm gonna avoid it and go out around the side path to see if there's any secrets over there. You know, it's fun. But I want to know all ends. I want to see all ends. So I usually save before a big decision, and I find it a personal challenge to just continue. Some games don't allow you to save scum, like Dragon's Dogma, for example. It has an online element to it with the pawn system, so you only have one save. And same with Kingdom Come Deliverance. You can save scum, but it requires you to create potions or buy potions, very expensive ones, called savior schnapps. And if you don't have any, you can't save the game. It's hilarious. Now, of course, it's very easy if you learn alchemy, but if you learn the recipes, you can make so many and you'll never run out. So there are ways around it. But in that game, it limits your ability to save scum. And that's like a meta level agency that the designers chose to integrate into the game. It limits your choices in interacting with the game so that you have some accountability for the actions you take within the game. If I didn't save the little boy from the wolves in Dragon's Dogma 2 because I spent like 24 to 48 in-game hours trying to find the freaking cave and I didn't follow the clues correctly, so when I finally came upon him, he was completely gone because he'd been eaten by the wolves. Yeah, I think about these things. I regret it. And there's no way I can go back. I don't have an earlier save. It auto-saved. Like, that is part of the story and it affects me. I wanted to see the good ending. I wanted to return him to his uncle or his grandfather or whatever, just because that's the kind of character I wanted to be. I feel bad about it. You know, I'm not the character, but it affects me because it's a story that I've played out and I've been given enough agency to make decisions and even make mistakes. And that is the basic element of role-playing. Putting yourself in the shoes of another person's personality to experience things from another person's perspective. It widens your real-life understanding of how someone is feeling. You know, putting yourself in the shoes of Geralt of Rivia, for example. He is a generally hated individual. He's essentially been cursed from birth because of his upbringing and having been genetically altered through chemical means. And now the only thing he can do to survive, because he's an outcast from society, is to fulfill his destiny of becoming becoming what he was raised to be, a witcher, right? A destroyer of monsters, a mercenary. So the choices in the Witcher games are effective because they do exhibit finality. I can choose to save somebody or I don't. If I save them, they're saved most of the time. If I don't save them, then you see them get ripped apart by the monster, or you come across their body or something. You know, there's a finality to your choices, and there's a variability to them as well. The dialogue options that you select can affect how the NPCs react to you, what they do, how they treat you. It's very effective, but role-playing as Geralt of Rivia, I try to make the choices as he would make them. So he's a little more gruff, he's a little more rough around the edges, you know, he's supposedly, he can't feel emotion, but we know that's not true. Whenever he encounters the needy or other outcasts of society, like even monsters who've gotten a bad rap and just trying to survive, or maybe a social outcast from society, and he has an opportunity to help them, the Geralt from the books and the one that I play, he will help them. You know, maybe not like go out of his way and like do a whole rigmarole, but he will still aid that person. He doesn't put up with the bullcrap, and there's a visible like apathy, but it's almost like second nature to Geralt, where if he sees someone in pain or someone vulnerable, he will help them. Can't bear to see the poor and needy suffer, which I think is very noble, and it makes him a relatable, likable character. So even though he's sort of an anti-hero, he's still a hero at heart. So I can roleplay as Geralt of Rivia, and I can roleplay as Henry of Skalitz in Kingdom Come Deliverance, because he's a hero. He wants to do the right thing, and you can even in Kingdom Come, you can make the bad choices. You can be an asshole, and people will not like you as much. You know, your reputation will decrease. But when it comes to playing a villainous character, I have a hard time with that. Why is it so difficult to play a villainous character, to perform evil actions in a virtual world? You know, it's not even real. Like, why does it matter? In Red Dead Redemption 2, you play as part of a Old West crime syndicate. You know, you're part of this gang. I just remember starting this game, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to play it, because after a couple hours, you're like robbing people, killing people for almost no reason, you know, murdering families. I felt awful. I was like, I don't think I like Arthur. So I almost didn't play through the game. But if you play that game, you can continue to make wicked choices, or you can forge a path forward and begin on a path of redemption. Your Red Dead Redemption. And the story, the way that it ends, man, oh gosh, he is redeemed by the end. If you play the good storyline, it is very moving to see the man who he starts out as at the beginning of the game. But if it were bad the whole way through, it just depresses my spirit, man. Like, I need some kind of redemptive quality to it. I don't like to be the evil character because I think about the decisions that I've made. I ponder them. I contemplate the actions that I've created and the consequences that have resulted from that. The choices and the memories that you make are real. So if I make an evil choice in a non-real environment, it can have real effects, either positive or negative. The positive effects of making an evil choice in a game, you know, frying those people in Infamous, I can see the consequences in a virtual environment, and I can consider the cost. You don't have to make those mistakes in real life, and that's the benefit of making these choices in a virtual world. The negative effects are it softens me and my personality to committing those actions in my mind. Imagination is one thing, but for someone who is imaginative, like most gamers who play role-playing games, we carry those choices with us. Each choice that a player character makes or a player makes transfers the knowledge of that consequence within the game world to our real world person. The reason why I feel the choice can be important and why making evil choices is a little overwhelming is because they affect my day-to-day imagination. Because I think about these things. Nothing doesn't matter. That's my point here. Nothing doesn't matter. What I'm trying to say is, when you sit down to play a game, consider the effect that it has on you, because it does matter. It's an extremely valuable form of entertainment that allows us to explore different stories that we have yet to experience. This could mean that I explore the dark side of the game, that I select the dialogue option that maybe I wouldn't do in real life, but maybe this character that I'm playing would. But I want to ensure that when I think back on the experience I had playing a game, it was positive, not in a way that is, oh, nothing bad happened, but in a way that benefits the building up of my character as I grow and age. I love role-playing games, but I encourage you, don't fill your mind with curses and murdering and deception and tricking others. We gotta be wise. We gotta learn how to discern things. Fill yourself up with good things, with the positive things. Make those good choices in games. Think about how it's affecting you as a person. Is this something that I would do? Is this the person I want to be? Or am I playing a character who would do something that I would not? So as you sit down to game this evening or this afternoon, whenever you're watching this video, I encourage you to focus on the good, on the lovely, on the beautiful things that gaming can bring us, stories we haven't experienced yet, and lives that we may never live but can, by proxy, dwell in. Thanks for watching.